Portland businessman Everton Beachy Stout MacDonald and his co-convict Oscar Barnes are set to be sentenced today in the Supreme Court in downtown Kingston. Beachy Stout was found guilty of the murder of his second wife, Tonya Hamilton MacDonald, on March 6 this year. Barnes was also found guilty of murder. Both men were also found guilty of conspiracy to murder. Beachy Stout and Barnes have been on trial in the Home Circuit Court since last September. The woman charged with the abduction and murder of 8-year-old Daniel Rowe Coyote Satchel will return to court today for a plea and a case management hearing. At the last hearing, the Crown informed the court that its case was ready to proceed to trial. Daniel Rowe was abducted from Brayton Primary School in Portmore St. Catherine on June 8, 2023. She was found later that day on Roosevelt Avenue in St. Andrew. Her throat was slashed. She died at the Bustamante Hospital for Children 2 days later. Classes at Sydney Pagan STEM Academy in St. Elizabeth were disrupted on Wednesday and the students sent home early after a teacher experienced a mental health breakdown on the school premises. The female teacher reportedly killed a chicken and walked around with the dead bird as she preyed on the compound. The incident was reportedly caught on video, which is now circulating on social media. The Education Ministry has issued a statement saying immediate measures have been implemented to provide support and counseling to those affected, noting that the incident has caused concern among students, parents, and the wider school community. The ministry says financial provisions are in place to enable access to clinicians external to the school community for psychological and socio-emotional care for school staff and students. The ministry has also sought to assure the public that students who were set to sit CXC exams were able to continue their examinations without interruption. The Education Minister, Favour Williams, says mental well-being is a serious issue that requires collective attention and support. The Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Malahoo Ford, says support for the retention of the UK-based Privy Council as the country's final appellate court appears to have grown in recent weeks. She says that support appears to have grown following the Privy Council's ruling in the murder conviction of Vybz Kartel and his co-accused.
The government has said that as part of the move to make Jamaica a republic, we will have to decide on a final court. At one stage, there were 3 options before us: acceding to the appellate jurisdiction of the Caribbean Court of Justice, bearing in mind that we already have the original jurisdiction. The Caribbean Court of Justice is part of our court structure because we are a member of the Caribbean community. Believe it or not, there are many Jamaicans who are saying retain the Privy Council in spite of all of the challenges. And I think after the cartel case, when I've read the comments online, I see so many still discussing the matter.
Speaking Wednesday at the post-cabinet press briefing, Minister Malahoo Ford says that suggests people are still not settled in their minds about whether they want to replace the Privy Council with the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ.
And some have floated the idea of a local final court because they're saying that if you move from London, you don't want to move to Port of Spain. And if we're talking about real decolonization, it means that you're bringing it to Jamaica. And even as I looked through the comments after the leader of the opposition's press release, I saw that point being raised again and again. It's just an indication that the views are many and varied on this matter, and we will have to work to arriving at consensus on it.
Marlene Malahoo Ford, the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. Government Senator Shireen Golding Campbell is accusing opposition leader Mark Golding of harming the country's constitutional reform agenda. She was reacting to Mr. Golding's stance on some of the proposals recommended in the draft report of the Constitutional Reform Committee, CRC.
I don't know what to make of the suggestion. I have seen comments that he has made to proposals in the draft report, but I'm very cautious because I haven't seen the draft report. So he's referencing proposals, but we are having a discussion without having seen the document that he's referencing. And this is part of what I view as a chaotic situation that the PNP president has led us into. I'm very concerned about the way we're proceeding when we have a body that was settled and we start to discuss these issues. It seems to me that his comments on the proposals, which I haven't seen, ought ought to take place in the context of that body.
Mr. Golding says he's willing to remain with the British monarchy for the time being if the issue of the Caribbean Court of Justice remains unsettled. He has also proposed that the membership of the Senate be increased to 42 members. The Senate is currently comprised of 21 members. 13 senators are appointed by the Governor General on the advice of the Prime Minister. The other 8 are appointed on the advice of the Leader of the Opposition. Senator Golding Campbell says the opposition leader has taken the wrong approach to the process of constitutional reform.
The opposition leader has listed his concerns about proposals, but he hasn't listed the proposals. So I don't know whether his comments and his concerns are valid, relevant, or of any measure that we should be discussing them, because what he has done is take this out of the process that would have been able to have long and fulsome discussion about it with the benefit of technical officers who would be able to do the research into the legal and legislative matters and advise the committee as to what kind of proposal they should come up with. This is not how you do legislative reform. You don't do it at the bus stop. The citizens of the country have their say, certainly. And at the end of the process, they will have a decision to make. But this is a very irresponsible way of dealing with legislative reform.
Shireen Golding Campbell, government senator, she was speaking on Nationwide at 5 on Wednesday. In the meantime, former independent Senator Professor Trevor Monroe is insisting that massive public engagement is needed to support the constitutional reform agenda.
Public education is foundational and fundamental to any constitutional reform process. The leaders in consensus and in agreement that obviously is required, but the foundation of that must be the public understanding technical terms, understanding difficult issues, the choice between parliamentary, presidential system, all of that stuff which has not been done and which now needs to be done even during this time. There needs to be that public education. This needs to be simplified. It needs to be put on TikTok. It needs to be done in all the ways that people can begin to understand why the Constitution is important, why is it of some significance to their lives, so that they themselves become engaged while the leaders, of course, seek to talk together in whatever way is facilitated.
Professor Trevor Monroe, a former independent senator. The Constitutional Reform Committee held several town hall meetings across the country to educate Jamaicans about a process to move Jamaica from a constitutional monarchy to a republic. Northeast St. Catherine MP, the JLP's Carencia Morrison, is accusing the opposition PNP of seeking to destroy the hopes and aspirations of many Jamaicans who want to see Jamaica become a republic. Ms. Morrison made the comment in a voice note shared with members of a WhatsApp group for young JLP supporters in her constituency. In the voice note, Ms. Morrison says the PNP is jealous of the fact that it's a JLP administration that would take Jamaica to republic status.
Our country will recall that in 2021, during a parliamentary address, the opposition leader said the government and the opposition should work towards making Jamaica a republic immediately. There was no mention of the CCJ Privy Council debate then. It appears that this issue is being raised as an excuse for the PNP to withdraw from the process simply because they are not the government to preside over this milestone event in our nation.
Ms. Morrison says the opposition has again flip-flopped on an issue of national importance.
The opposition sat on the Constitution Review Committee. The views of the opposition were deliberated and accommodated, and at the 11th hour, the leader of the opposition opted to jackknife the strides made by the committee, thereby diminishing the very spirit of cooperation and consensus which guided the deliberations. The opposition has shamefully put politics before country, and at the last moment flip-flopped on supporting the process in which they participated and previously agreed.
Carencia Morrison, MP for Northeast St. Catherine. King's Counsel K.D. Knight has sought to discredit the Crown's claim that Floyd Grindley and Dr. Percival Bahadur Singh willfully breached Circular 21 by seeking reimbursements in an attempt to defraud the state-owned oil refinery Petrojam. K.C. Knight, who's representing Mr. Grindley, made the assertion as he continued closing arguments in the Kingston and St. Andrew Parish Court on Wednesday. Dr. Bahadur Singh, the former chairman of Petrojam, is on trial for claiming reimbursement for fraudulent overseas trips and meetings at the company. The claims amounted to more than $73,000. Mr. Grindley, the former general manager of the company, is accused of aiding and abetting Dr. Bahadur Singh. Shalois Michael reports.
Circular 21 outlines the rules regarding overseas travel and the process for reimbursement. The prosecution claims the men conspired to work around the rules to defraud the company. But during closing arguments on Wednesday, K.C. Knight sought to explain what he described as the state of confusion surrounding the rules. He asserted that Circular 21 only refers to travels from Jamaica to overseas. He told the court that Dr. Bahadur Singh was already living overseas during his time as a chairman. Several of the Crown's own witnesses, he added, testified that they knew Dr. Bahadur Singh was indeed living and working in the United States. K.C. Knight says based on that alone, Dr. Bahadur Singh could not have been in breach of the document by claiming reimbursements. He further told the court that his client only authorized the reimbursement for Dr. Bahadur Singh. The final approval, K.C. Knight says, was left to the Chief Financial Officer. K.C. Knight reiterated that there is no evidence to show that Dr. Bahadur Singh transferred any money to Mr. Grindley. The matter continues Thursday morning at 10, when the defense is expected to conclude their closing submissions. Shalois Michael for Nationwide News.
Regional news now. The Ministry of Health in Grenada has observed a significant increase in the number of gastroenteritis cases over the past month, with people aged 5 years and over most affected. Gastroenteritis is caused by infection and inflammation of the digestive tract. It's caused by viruses, bacteria, and parasites. Symptoms include vomiting, diarrhea, stomach pains, and nausea. The ministry notes gastroenteritis is highly contagious and primarily spreads via the fecal-oral route. In other words, particles from infected individuals' feces are transferred to food and water sources. Coming into contact with vomit from an infected person can also spread the virus. And further afield, Slovak politicians have called for calm in the Central European country after Prime Minister Roberto Fico was shot multiple times by a would-be assassin on Wednesday. The incident, which occurred while the Prime Minister was attending a government meeting in a former coal mining town, came as a shock despite deep political polarization. Fico is reportedly in serious but stable condition, and a hospital official said doctors performed a 5-hour operation on the PM. He's being treated in an intensive care unit. A suspect who is in custody has been charged for attempted murder. Slovakia's Interior Ministry says an initial investigation found a clear political motivation behind the attack weeks before European elections.